Good evening and welcome to this edition of In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh. Very glad you're able to join us for this conversation about Richmond Power and Light. We'll be speaking with the General Manager and Assistant General Manager coming up in just a couple of minutes. Let's start off by reminding you, it's going to be broken record time. The candidates are filing for office. You should be making sure you're registered to vote for them. That is very simple, and you can do it very easily. Voter registration at 301 East Main Street, the courthouse, Monday, 8:30 to 5 p.m., Tuesdays, 8:30 to 4:30. The easiest way to do it, honestly, you can check your voting status, find out voting locations online, register to vote, indianavoters.com. You can do it from your phone, you can do it from your tablet, you can do it from your computer. You don't have to go out, raining, snowing, it doesn't really matter. We urge you to get registered to vote, and then we will find out a little bit later in February, actually, whether there will be any contested races for the primary, but you will then already be registered for the general election in November, and we do know that you're going to want to be registered to vote there. So please, indianavoters.com is the place to go to find out if you're registered, and if you're not, you can register for that location, or you can do it in person, 301 East Main Street, Monday, 8:30 until 5, Tuesday through Friday, 8:30 until 4:30. I had notes for this interview, and I put them on my desk, and if you've seen my desk anytime lately, they're under there someplace. But I think we'll be able to get through this hour really without much problem. My guests are Randy Baker, General Manager of Richmond Power and Light, and disclaimer, yes, another one, believe it or not, Tony Foster, who is the Assistant General Manager for Richmond Power and Light, is also a Whitewater Community Television board member. So thank you for doing that. You're actually on a second stint. You were a board member many moons over the horizon ago.
Yeah, probably in the early 2000s, yeah.
Okay. Took some time off, and we talked him into coming back, so he has just started another term, so thank you for doing that.
Thanks for having me.
I never want to start these things assuming that everybody watching this show, all three people, have any idea of who you are. You know that there are people moving in, moving out. So, Randy, give us a little bit of your background and tell us how you came to RP&L.
I came to RP&L 20 years ago, originally as a consultant, as an IT consultant. Before that, made my living traveling around and writing software and doing things like that for both public and private entities. Did a lot for the state of Indiana, did some for the feds, and then private companies like Procter & Gamble and some of those. So I came, it was during the time of deregulation when Indiana was looking at deregulating the electric industry. So I originally went there on a year contract, and I guess the year's not up. Right?
And 20 years later?
Yeah. So,
nice.
So, but I am a lifelong resident of Richmond.
Okay.
And was born here and raised here.
And obviously enjoy where you are right now to have this long year just continue.
Right.
Cool. Tony, how about now? I know I've known you for a while, so
Sure.
I know you've kind of traveled through, but what brought you to RP&L and how'd you get there?
Well, I spent over 16 years working for the city of Richmond. Held the title of Director of the Department of Metropolitan Development, which is now known as Infrastructure and Development. Decided I needed a little bit of a change, and so IU East asked me to come out and work for them, and I worked under External Affairs and Administration of Finance in a couple different roles, one as the Director of Area 9, and then moved into a new role with Compliance and Special Projects. And then found out about the opportunity to RP&L, really liked the nature of the work they do, and the connection again back with city government, as the RP&L board is the city council. Mm-hmm. So I started there in July of 2018. So I've been there about a year and a half now.
Okay. Curious now. You've been there 20 years, but you didn't start at RP&L. You've been there a year and a half. So the first question is probably way off base from where most people think I might go. What is one thing from each one of you that residents don't think about as far as RP&L goes that you think maybe they should? I mean, we walk into a room, we flip a light switch, we expect things to work, we get mad when they don't, you get those phone calls. But what would you say people don't think about as far as RP&L goes that they should?
I would say they don't recognize what all goes into getting an electron from its source all the way to your house. It is quite involved. It involves the entire PJM national grid. Some of our power comes from different sources. We do have a power plant that operates about 20 days a year at this point. Back in the day, that was a baseline plant, but it's been what we call peaker for since about 2004, 2006 time frame. But they probably don't realize how the markets work and things like that. That's from my vantage point.
You're newer to it. When you walked in the door, and even having worked for the city, there had to have been something that you went, wow, really?
Yeah, there was quite a bit, and some of the things I've found fascinating that I don't think the general public understands is all the behind the scenes experts that we have at RP&L doing things like metering, the software they have to use to keep track of metering for our large industrial customers all the way down to our residential customers. It's such a complex process, and a lot goes into it. And again, it's one of those things, we get our bill, we pay our bill, but you don't realize there's a whole lot of work behind the scenes depending on the nature of the customer. And I found that very fascinating when I started at RP&L.
Okay, we'll start there. You said bill.
Sorry, Randy.
So since I don't have any notes, I'm just kind of following your lead. There's been conversation about a potential rate increase. Nothing is locked into stone at this point. Talk a little bit about the process that you have to go through and why you want to take more money out of our pockets. Because you know that's how they just want more money. What is the reality from you all standpoint?
Well, to start off with, we are highly regulated by the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. We cannot just raise rates. They have to be approved through that regulation body, and the OUCC, which is I can't remember the acronym now, it's the consumer side of that.
Okay.
And so we're monitored pretty closely by those organizations, even quarterly.
Really?
Yes, we report quarterly to those folks, so they know what's going on. We do have what's called a revenue requirement, so they set that.
How much money you have to be able to take in order to operate?
Right, right. Whatever it costs us to get electric to your house, that's what we charge. We're not an IOU. We do not have owners per se and stockholders and things like that. So we have to go through that process. It is quite a lengthy process, and there is a lot of regulation there. The last time we had a base rate increase was in 2005, and the cost of service study that drives that was started in 2004. So cost of everything, including regulation, and some of the coal ash cleanup that you mentioned, is driving that whole process.
How often is a rate study? Do you ask for a rate study? Is it done just automatically at some point?
We do them. It's a good business practice, so we do them once every 5, 6, 7 years. We actually had a rate study in 2012-13 time frame.
Okay.
And just kept everything where it was at until now.
Is that what your rate study suggested that you do?
Well, finally I recommend things, but it's a board decision.
Okay.
The IURC, their purpose is to make sure we don't charge too much, but also that we don't charge too little. I got a letter from them probably a year and a half ago now, or a little over a year, that said you're not meeting your revenue requirement. Your rates may be a little low.
Okay.
And then beyond that, that's when we started the cost of service study.
We get that with our mortgage sometimes. You don't have enough money in your escrow,
Right.
Add some more to it. The only way for you to add money is to charge the taxpayers, the ratepayers.
We get no tax monies at all.
No tax money, ratepayers.
Ratepayers.
Okay.
In fact, we have a payment in lieu of taxes that we pay back to the city on an annual basis.
Okay. Are you in the process of the study now, or has the study been done and you all know what you're going to be asking for?
Study is almost finished. It's not quite finished, but we are wrapping that up now.
Okay.
So
Is there a feeling where this may come out? You all did one in 2013,
right.
so you're not surprised. You kind of have at least a starting baseline at that point to say, okay, we were good there, but close. So considering everything that's happened in the last 5 to 7 years, we think 2%, 1.5%?
Well, people usually understand it more in terms of dollars.
Okay.
So we're looking at probably an extra $4 to $6, $7 a month on a residential bill.
Okay.
That's based on 1,000 kilowatt hours a month. That's what the average here is in Indiana.
Okay. So on average, $4 to $7 is where we might end up.
Yeah,
Is it
something like that. Yeah.
Is what is driving this just the cost of getting electricity from point A to our homes, or are there other things, infrastructure? Everybody has to update.
Right.
We keep hearing how old the grid is. I imagine that there are old components within our P&L that have to be dealt with. Is some of that also driving this?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's also regulations, government regulations. Most of the people around town know about the CCR rule. At this point, we have to do a coal ash cleanup from the years of 1954 when the plant started. On our site, there was coal ash dumped behind there until 1970. That now has to be remediated. So that's a big part of this as well.
What's been happening with the coal ash since 1970? I'm just curious. There's a cutoff there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
We're well beyond that. You all were burning coal after 1970.
Right.
What happened to those deposits?
At that point, a lot of the coal ash began trucking out to either landfills, and some of it actually went back to the mines where it came out of.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. For those who haven't paid attention, the coal ash that you have, approximately how much is it, and where is it?
It's directly behind our generating plant down on US 27 South. We think there's about 400,000 tons of it.
400,000 tons of it. Okay.
Actually, Tony is the project manager for that cleanup.
Did you stick a giant stick down? How do you figure?
Well, we have an area that's approximately 8 acres in size and up to 20 feet deep in the western portion of that property, because the property behind our P&L slopes down. And so over the years it was filled, and it's now level. So we know that at the deepest point it's about 20 feet deep and covers an area of about 8 acres. Mm-hmm. So that's, if you can visualize acres, that kind of gives you a better understanding of how large in scope the project is.
Okay. As you clean this up, how many different ways are there that you could go with this cleanup? I assume EPA is saying you have to do this?
Yes.
The government sticking their noses into your business and
yeah.
telling you got to do this? Okay. What are the options?
Well, we could do a number of different things. One of those would be to cap it in place, meaning putting an earthen barrier on top of it and sealing it off for the future. If we do that, we have to monitor it for 30 years with monitoring wells and other measures. And so there's the pros and cons to that. One of the pros to that is that's a less expensive option. But the con would be, what if regulations change 10 years from now, 5 years from now? What if something is detected in the groundwater 20 years from now? Are we going to have to open that thing up? Another option would be to completely remove all of the product from our property and take it to a lined landfill facility. The closest facility right now is in Randolph County. There are other facilities in southern Indiana. We could truck it out. There's the potential to use train cars to take it out. So we have ballpark estimates on all of those options. So from capping to removal, the range is anywhere from $18 to $55 million. So I know that's a big range, but the lesser of those costs would be leaving it in place. The higher of the cost would be taking it off site by truck or train.
But if you use the lesser, in theory, you could end up having to remove it anyway. So you could pay $18 million to cap it, and 15 years from now they go, no, that's not good. You have to move it. So your 18 covered you for a while, but
Right. We didn't.
and the 55 is probably going to be 65 or 70 by that time, just through inflation.
Right.
Okay.
One of the things to add to that too is we call it an impoundment area where the coal ash is actually impounded, but it is not, unlike some of the others you've seen around the state and around the country, it is not next to a waterway.
Okay.
So,
Right. That does differentiate ours from a number of those that you may see in the news that are used as the problem children of CCR piles.
You said there's a place in Randolph County. You mentioned some places down south, and you said landfill. Some people's minds are going to go to, Richmond has a landfill. Can you not use that site to dump that? You're talking a large amount of money at the minimum. You're talking $18 million at the minimum. And I'm not even going to pretend like I know how much it costs to open up a cell, line it, or anything of that nature, but I would assume the closer you could keep it, the cheaper it would be. Is that not, and since the landfill's owned by the city and you all are owned by the city, wouldn't this just be a city problem that could be handled?
Well, one of the things we have to look at are facilities, when putting together our preliminary cost estimates, looking at facilities that are currently permitted to accept this type of material.
Okay.
So our early cost estimates that were put together by our consultants were based upon closest facilities that are currently permitted to accept this material based upon the type of liner and other things that they have in place.
Okay.
So that's where we've gotten these preliminary numbers.
Okay. So there's money that has to be used for that. We talked about the fact that you've got a part of your generating plant, which you all own, but have leased to IMPA. What's the agreement for the plant with IMPA? For those, again, who...
in 2014, we turned the management of that plant over to the Indiana Municipal Power Agency. They are our wholesaler for all electric. Since 1982, even the electric that we generated, we sold to IMPA, and it was distributed out from there. We did not sell directly to the market, although we got market prices as the market. One of the things, thinking about people don't understand, things that people don't understand is we have a steady kilowatt per hour rate on all ours, but if you're on the market, that rate goes up and down like the stock market. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So they have it. You all are still responsible for it.
We still own the buildings and the land and things like that.
Okay.
It runs about 20 days a year at this point.
Okay.
We were looking at decommissioning that way back in 2010, 2011. It was built in 1954 to be a 50-year plant. So we're well past that at this point. But it is still running as a peaker plant like that. They took over management.
When you
of
say
it.
peaker plant, I think I know exactly what that means.
I'm sorry,
but-
I'm starting to throw out
No, it's fine. Listen,
industry terms.
This is supposed to be a learning
Yeah,
experience
okay.
here. So,
When we say we used to be a baseline, it meant it generated almost 24/7. But now it only generates when the electric peaks are high enough and the market is high enough to make it,
profitable to do.
profitable to run.
Very hot summer days when you're trying to get people to
Any of the
conserve,
extremes.
but
Any
Yeah.
hot or cold.
hot or cold.
Right.
Okay. The agreement with IMPA started a long time ago. This is a cooperative of
They are a joint action agency.
Okay.
Joint action agencies around the country, not just here, were started, for those that are old enough to remember it, the energy crisis of the late 70s. Energy got wildly up and down in the markets, and and it was hard to control. So these joint action agencies popped up to buy and sell and kind of smooth out the energy markets at that time. So that was the early 80s, when most of them around the country popped up at that point.
Richmond was an early.
We were one of the
partner in
founding
this.
members of IMPA. I think there were maybe 5 utilities around the state that started that. But you mentioned co-op. It kind of does operate a little bit like a co-op, and now serves about 61 cities, 60 in Indiana and 1 in Ohio.
As they change, we talk about renewable energy. They are responsible. Would it be safe to say they are responsible for the solar fields that we've seen pop up? One on the New Creation, what was New Creation site, one almost across the street from that as you're heading, and
Yes.
is there a third one?
There's a second one starting up, there's a third one, and a fourth one starting in the industrial park at some point this year, and potentially another one besides that. So we could, if everything goes the way it's planned, have as much as 40 megawatts of solar in Richmond at the end of that. And
For those of us who don't
Yeah.
do the math well,
I realized I got off on
discuss
industry
what
terms,
that is,
yeah.
because I think it is something that people think
Right.
about. How much renewable energy are we getting? You're saying the average monthly bill is 1,000 kilowatt hours or something like that? Is that what we were saying earlier?
Yeah.
Okay. So in relationship to what you're saying this is putting out, how many homes would that do approximately?
Well, that entire picture is probably a little more complicated than that.
Okay.
One of the pros.
We got an hour.
One of the advantages of being in an electric co-op like that, or a joint action agency, is they go out and, as the agency, and broker power all over, some of it being renewable. So in our portfolio, when I started the utility, we were 99.9% coal powered. By working through IMPA, they have wind, solar in their portfolio, some nuclear, and natural gas, of course. So we've moved away from coal to about 67, 68% coal now at this point. Most of that's been in the last 10 years or so. The state average on moving away from coal is still about 72, 73%. So we've actually beat the state average in terms of moving away from coal and getting renewables in that portfolio.
Nice. I'm going to backtrack because I can hear people yelling at me. We're going to go back to the rate increase. What is the time frame now, and what are the next steps in that? We probably didn't wrap that up well for people. So
sure.
What has to happen? It's come before the RP&L board once or twice,
Right.
for discussion.
For discussion.
I assume at the next meeting there's more discussion. Will there be public hearing? Have we had it? What happens?
Well, we opened this up probably, I don't know, a couple of months ago. And Tony and I have met with, like, the Chamber, the EDC, some of those groups around town. We've contacted most of our key accounts, our large industrial customers, and look for shows like this to spread the message as well.
Glad to help.
Yeah. So, but in terms of next steps, we would have to go before the IURC and present that case, backed up by that cost of service study.
Okay.
And that's all done third party. We do not do that in-house. That's done outside from people that have no skin in the game. So that's how we move forward with that. In terms of timeline, it will probably be the very end of this year or of 2020, or maybe even the first quarter of 2021 before anything would happen. And at that point, we plan a 3-year. If we do get an increase, it'd be passed over 3 years. It'd be phased in over a 3-year period.
Okay. And it has been a while since you all have had it, and obviously we talked about the plant. So let's go back to the plant that you have that was a 50-year plant, which I can tell from the math of my age, I know you've exceeded. What has to happen with it? Does it get taken apart? Does it get renewed? What do you do?
Well, at the end of a life cycle on any of these plants, they are decommissioned. It's called decommissioning. So, again, the EPA, IDEM, which is the Indiana branch of the EPA, they come in and do that assessment, give you guidelines to go by.
Okay, but in decommissioning, you will have to take it apart.
Probably, yeah.
Okay, and probably ship the pieces part someplace.
Well, theoretically, we could probably save the building and use it for something else, I guess, but it was built to be a power plant, and I'm not sure how many other uses. What other uses would be good in there, but you never can tell.
Okay. You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're having a conversation with Randy Baker, General Manager of RP&L, Tony Foster, Assistant General Manager of RP&L. I appreciate you both being here. Talk a little bit about the business of power plant, and you all are a business to a certain extent of people. Nothing, I mean, you can put up all the poles you want. When the wind comes through and poles go down, you need people. Talk about the skill set of some of your people, what they go through, what they have to learn, what kind of time it takes.
Well, that's a pretty big area, but if you talk about our linemen and our substation crews that go out in all kinds of weather, it is a 24/7 business. But in terms of training and things like that, a lineman has to be in training for 5 years before he reaches what we call journeyman status. So from the lowest at apprentice to the highest, that's when they can actually go out and get on the poles and do the work that needs to be done. So those are very skilled labor jobs. We've got everything from engineers to back office, customer service, and as Tony mentioned, the meter departments and things like that. So we do have a pretty diverse group of workers there.
But you've got fewer workers now than you had 15 years ago?
When I started there 20 years ago, we had 151 employees. We are down to 97 at this point. And a lot of that work has been automated through the years. Before I got there, it was even more than that. If you go way back, before computers, everything was done by hand. Everything was hand entered. Meter techs would go out, meter readers would go out in the field and read the meters, write it down, bring it back, and you can see the process there. So most of those jobs have gone out through attrition. There's never been a time since I've been there that we've actually laid off people. But as technology came, which is what is driving this whole energy industry now, is technology, and as that technology changes, requires less people.
Talk about some of the technology that is coming to Richmond. Smart meters, I think, is what they're called. How does that actually work? How do we actually know our meters are being read and you all aren't just kind of guessing at the numbers? And I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, but come on. I'm asking you questions that you've gotten before, because there is a fear that you all are just kind of estimating this thing. You don't really know. Nobody comes and reads my meter anymore.
No, those are all wireless. That's all wirelessly done now. We are putting in AMI meters, advanced technology meters.
How much, before I let you, how much of Richmond is done, how much is still left to be done? You say you're putting them in. Obviously, you started. How long ago did you start, and how long will the process take?
We have 22,500 and some odd customers, and so about that many meters. Some a few more. Multiple meters at some businesses and residences and things like that. We started out that whole project with just 1,000 meters, and we're up to about 4,500 now. Probably another 2,000 to 3,000 will go in next in 2020. So we're kind of eventually replacing all the older technology that's been there long before I started, actually. So that is some of the infrastructure that you mentioned earlier.
How are
That is a
those
big part.
actually? How are those read? How do you get? Does it feed back to you all's building?
There are points throughout the city where the meter data is collected, and then it is then transferred to the Richmond Power and Light meter department. So there are tall buildings and structures around town that have multiple antennas, probably cell towers and things like that. But some of those we have points of meter data collection on those, and that's how it's collected. And so, as Randy said, we have 4,000 of the AMI meters out there now. Those are strategically placed all across the city so that when there is an outage, we can get data from those AMI meters, and we have a better understanding of the scope of that outage. We didn't just start in a neighborhood and completely put all AMIs in one neighborhood and then move on to the next, but kind of built that network for the city and then started filling in the gaps over the remaining years.
So with 22,000, you all still have a number of years to go. What kind of cost in that technology exists on a per meter, per neighborhood, however you all have it type basis? What are we thinking about?
I've forgotten what the cost per meter is, and it, of course, is like everything else, it changes, especially if you've got a 6-7 year project going on. But we're probably looking at a couple $1 million total over that time period.
Okay. You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're speaking with Randy Baker, General Manager, Tony Foster, Assistant General Manager of RP&L. We're going to take a short break and be back with more In Focus in just a moment.
Family disaster plan is the document that a family would make to prepare themselves on how they would respond or how they would react to any event or emergency. The plan should be written by all members of the family. That way they have ownership, they all have involvement, everyone's ideas are addressed and concerned, and all brought together to make a complete document. Contact information is important because you and your loved ones may be separated during an event. If you're separated, you have to know who to be in contact with so you all can communicate eventually together. Family members may be at different locations. They should have a central meeting point away from the home where they all know they can go to reunite and become a whole family again. Everyone should be prepared. When families are more prepared, it makes the community more prepared, and that's better for everyone involved.
Keep up with local government information and shows with WGTV Online. Go to WCTV.info and click on the WGTV Online button. It's a live stream and video on demand site in one. Click the play button, you'll see whatever's on the air on WGTV Channel 11, or scroll down for videos on demand. Choose whatever meeting or show you'd like to watch. It's easy to stay informed with WGTV Online, a service of Whitewater Community Television. Welcome back to In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're having a conversation about Richmond Power and Light, the municipally owned electric company here in Richmond. We have Randy Baker, General Manager, Tony Foster, Assistant General Manager, joining us. We were talking, well, we've been talking all over the place. That's what happens when I don't do notes. But we were talking about some of your people. And I wanted to have, and didn't get a chance to do it, to talk to some of your linemen, I assume it was, that have been out in various places, because you all do disaster help for other people. It's kind of a firefighters do the same thing, policemen do the same thing, but you all help in disasters. In other places around the U.S. and outside of the area, I know you had, I'm not even sure how many, I had a chance to speak to a couple of gentlemen who were in Puerto Rico.
That's correct.
At one point. Talk about what you hear from them, the experiences that they have going into places like Puerto Rico, or even places that have just been really badly hit by a hurricane or some other natural disaster, and really trying to help people regain the basics. I kind of jokingly said we walk into a room and flip a switch and we take it for granted. But after something like that, that's not the case for a lot of people.
That's correct. Well, Puerto Rico is the furthest that we've ever went, but it's more common to go around Indiana, especially to other communities like ours around the state that are part of the IMPA group, an IMEA, which is a reliability and safety organization. And we're also a member of the APPA, which is the American Public Power Association. That's a national group, and we do attend some of those and do some disaster mutual aid help in those. And those will go out of state. As far as Georgia and Florida, East Coast, and just wherever it happens.
How is that decided? Do you have certain people who have said, if this comes up, I'm willing to go? Is it a rotating thing among all your linemen? Can they opt out?
They can't opt out, but it is a rotating schedule for that, based on seniority and the position that they're in terms of apprentice or the journeyman lineman. But we really don't have too many problems getting volunteers for that. Most of our linemen, it's almost like a calling to them. I mean, they like to work outside. They don't mind being up in the air, and the pay's good when they go out for those. So
The gentleman, and how many went to Puerto Rico?
sent 3 linemen and a truck. We actually barged a truck over there, and so they were there for a couple of months, almost 3 months.
When you had a chance to talk to them on their return, what was, particularly because that's the farthest that you've gone, what was their response to what they saw?
Oh, it was life-changing for them. I mean, maybe that'd be another show to get them on here to talk about some of those experiences.
Yeah.
But they went down there. It's a completely different culture, of course, and they are tuned into all the gear and then whatever's the latest technology we have here in our part of the world. But they went down there and they were pulling out infrastructure that was from the 40s, and it was just complete devastation down there during that. And the things we do, you see some of our trucks around town, they're carrying poles, and we've got a digger derrick that digs and does those things. Mm-hmm. Down there in that environment, they were actually digging holes by hand and carrying the poles by hand, and then climbing because you couldn't get trucks into some of those locations.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's conversation as people have tried to do. Solar power is one thing that we talked about. Friends Fellowship up the way, I know, has put solar panels on top of their roof, trying to be energy efficient, and a lot of people are wanting to do that.
Right.
There's always that conversation about what happens if I put this up, I'm able to create enough power that I have my needs taken care of, but I create this excess. What happens to it? How do I sell it back? How do I get it on the grid? How do I think that will be a conversation that has to be grappled with. Richmond was grappling to a certain extent with it. What is you all's take on the future of that as more people try to get into, I assume solar will come down and be more reasonable for consumers. There's a win-lose in that, I think,
Sure.
on both sides.
Oh, yeah. Distributed generation is going to be key in the future and going forward. Technology is driving that. When I say it's driving our business, that's one of the areas that is starting to be driven by technology. And as you mentioned, as things like solar panels and that come down in cost, it'll make more.
How do you all look at
what
the
you're
ability
talking
of me to sell back excess power to you?
What you're talking about is net metering, what's called net metering. So any excess, and depending on the size of your system, any excess that goes back on the grid, the utility will pay you for it. If you've got a little bit bigger system like the Friends Church does, they are paid wholesale rates plus 25% from our wholesaler, who is IMPA, for excess that they generate and put back on the grid. Other things that I like to get out there when people are talking about that is, if you are thinking about solar panels, please contact us, because there are regulations on how you hook to the grid, and there's a lot of safety things that have to be followed. And we like to know where it is, because one of the problems that potentially we could see going forward, if you have an outage, now you got guys on the line. Well, it's pretty easy when you got all your power coming from one source to cut it off. But now if you've got different solar or wind or anything else, any other kind of generation out there, you have to be able to track that as well for the safety of the line workers up there.
I said that there's winners and losers on both sides of that. The winners may be the people who are able to do it and generate and maybe even sell some back. The losers on the other side, my feeble little mind, might be those who can't do it, who still have to rely on our P&L. You have a cost of doing business. The IURC is watching it. There's fewer of us out here 10, 15, 20 years down the line that are using your service. You still have a cost of business that's this. We end up paying more on the other end, potentially. How does that look as you all look to the future of how many customers you have, how many customers you can potentially lose? Cable television has had to consider it with people cutting the cord and getting their from YouTube, that same thing. You all have that same issue.
We have same issue. It costs X amount of dollars to keep the infrastructure out there and keep it up. So if you have all of a sudden have many, right now it's not that big of an issue because there's not that many people doing it, but it will be in the future. So now you've got less people to support that grid. So out west where there's a lot more solar, and I travel out there every year and talk to about 100 different GMs from different utilities, they have instituted some costs for doing that, for even the solar customers, to make sure that the have-nots are not paying the whole load, for that infrastructure.
So as an industry, I think over the next 10, 15 years, as this happens, as you mentioned, our rate structures, as we know today, may not be the same, because you're saying the winners and the losers. The fact that if you are selling it back to the grid, maybe you would be helping to be responsible to help pay for the maintenance of the grid. So there are a lot of models being floated out there as to how is this all going to look when more distributed energy is prevailing in our communities. So yeah, today's rate study that we mentioned earlier may look totally different 10, 15 years from now. That's because the model is changing.
What's the technology that you're looking at? You're looking at, we're not trying to put Randy out, but somewhere down the line, this becomes your issue. Yeah. What is it that you're looking at? What makes you smile as you look toward technology and changing in this business, and what makes you go, what did I do?
Well, one of the things we're working on implementing this year, Randy just signed the contract recently, is we are upgrading our customer service software and a number of our other software systems for the utility. And what this is going to do is to not only allow us to be more efficient internally, but we're going to be able to provide better data for our customers. They're going to have access through the website, via an app, where they're going to be able to look at their usage, especially if they have an AMI meter, which everyone will eventually, and be able to look at their usage on an hourly basis. And so if they question, why is my bill so high this month, they can pull that up, we can pull it up with them, and we can say, wait a second, that weekend, Super Bowl weekend, did you have a party? your hourly spike on Sunday evening was pretty big, and like, oh, that's why. So you're going to be able to look at real-time data and understand your bill, to help you budget for your bill better, and things like that. So we are implementing, these are very sweeping changes for our P&L because all of our software systems will be touched. Everything from customer service to finance, inventory management, engineering. This software system is all fully integrated and is going to help everyone, even to the linemen in the field. They'll be able to use iPads, hop on GIS, and they'll be connected, and it's going to be really neat. So this is a huge change for our P&L, and in my opinion, I assume you would agree, Randy. With
Oh yeah, it's
Coming
This
5
year.
years? This year?
maybe first portions of this may be implemented as early as the end of this year.
Wow. Okay.
So it's good. It'll be a couple years to get everything fully implemented, but for the utility as a whole, it is going to be really nice to see all of the components of our operations integrated, and have a customer side where they're going to see the benefits of this, because they're going to be able to access their data a lot easier, and again see real time usage and things like that.
For a long time, there was plenty of conversation about the conservation of energy. Every time you turned around, you were getting hit with a public service announcement or some news story about conserve, lower your thermostat, blah, 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 blah. Don't hear as much of that anymore. Is it just passé, gone by the wayside, technology makes all of that unimportant, or have utilities, electric company in particular here, since you all are sitting here, gotten away from that conversation? People did all that they could do.
Yeah, there's still a lot of home lighting, LED lighting, and things like that that are going on. But you're right, the message, I wouldn't say it's watered down, but people are used to it, some of that at this point. In Richmond, 70% of our usage comes from our large manufacturers and large institutions. So to me, the home thing and the LED lights and all that was kind of some of the low-hanging fruit.
Okay.
So now as technology and distributed energy technologies move into that space, that's going to be the biggest impact. In terms of the home usage, in Indiana, we say 1,000 kilowatt hours is the normal and the average. Mm-hmm. If you go out west, of course it is more sun out west, but their average usage out there is like 650.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a huge change.
Mm-hmm. And you go to places that are, for Hawaii, for instance, our kilowatt hour charge here is 6, and time you add the ECA on there, it's about 10 cents a kilowatt hour. It's like 22, 25 cents down there, but everybody's got solar. The temperatures aren't extreme at all.
Mm-hmm. For people who are thinking about solar power here in Indiana, on a cloudy day like this, you just kind of go, why bother? But there's enough sun. Is that a technology that here in Indiana you see as, again, a few years when it comes down, where the homeowner has a chance to save money? Or in your thoughts, is there another way that they should be thinking?
Well, one of the things I've read about and learned about through some of the training I've gone through is that solar doesn't pay for itself when you have low-cost electricity in your community, and there's a cutoff point. And one number they throw out a lot is like 15 to 17 cents. If your power is higher than 15 to 17 cents per kilowatt hour, for example, that's when solar might become an option. We are for a residential customer, for example, in the 9-cent kilowatt hour range. So you can see at this point our power costs are at a level where it may not pay off for itself here yet, especially considering our weather patterns. Mm-hmm. But again, as the cost of solar come down, that may be a different conversation.
Okay.
I think kind of to add to that as well, some of the pricing on that solar is going to be, can a homeowner generate a kilowatt of hour for less money than the solar panels are going up around the city? Right now, he can't. So the solar power coming from all the solar fields that IMPA has put in, has not raised our rates. I mean, they've raised over the years, but it's not a big jump in any. So that story may be continued into the future. We'll see what happens.
Want to talk a little bit about, we shoot a show out at your place, I Heart Cooking, which was followed previously by the Electric Gourmet, which started out there, which obviously some people who are coming to town recently don't remember that show. That facility that's there has been there for a while. Is it something that you all find a positive feature? Is that something that you all continue to try to upgrade, want people to use, want people to know about? What's the story with that? Because the
cooking show itself.
The cooking show itself, and yeah.
Actually, my understanding on that show was started way back when cable first came to town, and we were able to all of a sudden do some local programming. And the utility put up the kitchen, the utilities did the show to promote electric appliances and to sell more electricity, and it just kind of came on. It was discontinued because of the cost of doing it. But
you all still have a note. I think it's still on your website, though, in some ways, isn't it?
People still go out on that website and get the recipes and things like that from the shows.
So you all leave it. People want it, so you leave it.
Well, at the time, other than the bill paying piece of our website, that was the most popular part of our website.
The downtown bill paying area looks much nicer since you don't have another building next to it. Tell people about when that building is open, when they can find you all, how they pay their bill. I don't pay mine. I leave it to my wife. So I think she mails everything. But I think you all still have a lot of use in that building.
I've got Tony's the manager. That's part of his department now. So.
And I'm surprised sometimes at how much traffic I actually still see in that building.
Yeah, we are one of the few utilities that still have a walk-in office in the area.
Yeah.
And they do see a lot of traffic. We still have 2 drive-through windows, several staff that work down there every day, open 8 to 4:30, 8 to 5 every day, taking care of our customers. And that's where you can go to sign up for electricity. Folks that may go in and request some help with maybe doing a payment extension or something, that's where they go to sign up for that. But yeah, in a lot of the phone calls, if you call in, a lot of the phone calls are answered from that office. But it's nice to have that local feel, being able to go in and see a real person when you have a question about your power. So.
That personal touch thing. People seem to be moving away from it, and like I say, it has surprised me as I've gone by there, and I've had to walk in there once or twice, how much traffic still goes through there.
Yeah, they stay very busy.
We get about 25% of our customer base that goes through there every month.
Last, we've got about 5 minutes left to go, but I know a lot of people would be curious. Strong wind comes through, power goes down for an area of town. What do you all see? How do people get alerted? How fast do you all move? And do people still need to call you all for, listen, my power's out? Are you getting most of that on your phone or what?
We get it on our phone before anything else. Any kind of blips on the system actually starts texting and emailing the staff. And so we know what's going on a lot of times before the public. And with this AMI metering, it'll be even more accurate as we move forward. But we still do need people to call in because we don't necessarily know what the situation on the ground is, whether there's wires down or poles down, or if it's a partial outage or a full outage, if neighbors out, things like that.
There's a frustration when they don't always get a person when they do that, though. How do you do? Are they leaving messages? Are you getting them? Who's responding?
So we have a call, a phone answering system that picks up after hours. So 24/7, you should be able to reach a real person unless it's a really big outage and lots of people are calling
Lots of
in.
people are calling.
So, but we do have that system in place so that you should be able to leave that message or talk to someone and give that information. Like Randy said, we're getting the information that this neighborhood is out or this street is out. But like he said, they may be able to say it's a giant tree and it's, and that might help our dispatchers figure out what level of resources they need to send out.
Okay. Just wanted to check. And easiest way to find you all on social media, are you more Twitter than Facebook? Are you, I know you're on Twitter because I see some things there, but.
I believe some of those messages go out to both sources at the same time.
They do, yeah.
Okay. So if people are still on Facebook, they can hit you all up there and keep up with things.
Those phone systems, sometimes they do get overloaded. No matter what we do, we only have so many lines that go in there.
Randy Baker, General Manager of RP&L. Thank you very
Thanks,
much. I
sir.
appreciate it. Tony Foster, Assistant General
Nice to
Manager.
meet you.
Thanks.
Nice.
I appreciate the time that you all have spent with us.
It
Really
goes
do.
both ways.
Couple of things to remind you of. First of all, just a real quick, I started the show this way. I'm going to end it this way. A reminder that you should get registered to vote. Voting is going to take place for the primary on May 5th, but you want to make sure that you are registered to vote. If you have moved, if you have changed locations, whatever the case may be, you can check your voting status, find out voting locations or more, indianavoters.com, or if you just know that you need to register, you can do that in person if you'd like. You can do it at indianavoters.com, or you can do it in person, 301 East Main Street. Richmond Meltdown is going to be taking place. That has become a very, very popular event. Lots of things going on next week, most of it occurring in the late part of the week, the 24th and 25th. A couple of things that you might want to check out. Chili for Charity, that cook-off is the 23rd from 5:30 to 7 at Morrison Reeves Library. Who's got the great chili? Yeah? No? No chili. Okay, fine. Public ice carving taking place at Morrison Reeves Library. Also, the Department of Improv at Diva is having a special show on the 25th, 701 East Main Street. That's from 5:15 until 6 o'clock. Limited seating, but it is free admission. Music at the Meltdown and a little mayhem, they say, going to be going on downtown. There's a schedule there. Shows at 3, 4, 3:45, 4:30, 5:15, 6, and 6:30. And don't forget that story time takes place at Morrison Reeves Library, 5 p.m. on Wednesdays, 80 North 6th Street. Hands-on discovery and more for ages 2 through 5. That's just some of what's going on around the area. I want to thank you for watching this week's In Focus on Whitewater Community Television, WGTV Channel 11. If you missed any of the conversation, check out our video on demand site. You can also hear the audio of the program on G1013 and 1490, 100.9 WKBV. I wish you well. Have a great weekend.